I'm Andrew VandenHeuvel, and I am a astronomy professor here at Grand Rapids Community College. I've been teaching here since about 2009, mostly teaching online, but I'm really passionate about video games and innovative and creative ways of teaching science. And so I love playing games, and I love looking for cool ways of teaching science using games. And lately I've been playing a lot of Fortnite, so I'm really excited to share this with you. Here's just a quick outline of the presentation I want to share with you guys. First, we're going to do a crash course in Fortnite. So if you've never heard of Fortnite before, I'm going to give you a quick crash course of what it's all about, how the game works. We're going to talk about why does it matter? Why on earth would we spend any time talking about a video game in a science setting? And I want to chat about my experience with my journey with Fortnite. I have kind of an unusual story, which I'm excited to share with you guys about how I got into this particular project and eventually got Epic Games to give me some financial support for this project. And then we'll take a deep dive into some of the physics of gravity that you can find inside the game. And I'm especially excited to show you what the future holds. We're in a very exciting time for the future of Fortnite. So here's a quick crash course in Fortnite. Fortnite is a free-to-play online game. It is most well known for its battle royale. This is 100 players all jump into an island, and they battle against each other. I have some video I'll play in the background here so you can kind of get a sense. They jump in. The game is available basically on every platform except Apple devices, which is, but all PC consoles. You jump into this island. You go and you loot the island. You battle against other people, and you try to become the last person standing. You can see it's very comic booky in its animation style, so even though it is inherently violent, I like to call it the world's largest Nerf battle because it has that very Nerf feel to it. So it is a kid-friendly game, even though it is rated for ages 13 and up. A couple other pieces about the game I think that make it really compelling. One is that it has these structures that you can build. So it is called Fortnite because the premise is that you build forts, which means you can harvest materials like cut down trees to harvest wood, and then you can use that wood to then build structures that you can fight with and build all sorts of things. There's vehicles inside the game, and they continue to add more vehicles over time. So here's a motorcycle. And it even has some really interesting mechanics, like fire is a mechanic that's built into the game. So objects and trees and other props within the game can catch on fire, and that fire can spread, which has led to some interesting projects. One of the things that's particularly enticing about Fortnite and why it's captured so many people is, in many ways, it is the first example, I think, of like the metaverse reaching its fullest potential. And the reason I'm showing you this is because you have a crossover of all this intellectual property. Notice we had Superman from the DC universe, Spider-Man, Iron Man, these original characters created by Fortnite, as well as Star Wars, Disney stuff. So it's one of the very few times you see one environment in which all these different intellectual properties have actually been brought together. It's pretty amazing. And then not only that, there's all these ridiculous, emotes that are built into the game. So here's the Gangnam Style dance, and this just goes in to feed into like the excitement and enthusiasm for kids to play a game like this. It's silly, but it also makes it very sticky. What many people don't know about Fortnite, like a lot of parents or adults know about this battle royale, what they don't know about is Fortnite Creative. This is like Minecraft, but with better graphics. So not only can you build with all these structures in the game, you can use a whole lot of really sophisticated tools to build inside Fortnite Creative. Let me just show you with some of this screen capture here. You have a variety of template islands that you can choose from to build your own island in Fortnite. Those can be just totally blank slates. And inside that environment, you can or you can use a full template island, right? A full city ready to go. Brands have used this to build their own islands, right? So here's Doritos Island. There's all kinds of goofy games that can be made, like collecting the coins as you slide down this thing. The users then can create their own games that then anyone in the world can play, like a giant truck jumping through a skee ball thing. What this opens up is just tremendous opportunity for a community of gamers to create content. It's really very exciting. And it also means there's like a new type of job that opens up because these can be monetized and people can make games. If you were to scan through, this is already out of date because the interface looks different from even a month ago. But if you scan through, you can see thousands of these user-created or brand-created creative islands, many of which don't even have guns in them. They're just like experience. The tools of Fortnite Creative are really impressive. You have the template islands as I showed you, but there's also all of these prefab structures. Again, I'm going to just play some background video here so you can see. So I jump into a prefab island. This is in Fortnite Creative. I can pull out my little digital cell phone in the game and choose from thousands of prefab structures, these giant buildings. Some of them are, I mean, it's beyond what can be described in a brief presentation. But you can choose from, props like trees and foliage and cars and all those things that just look cool. But then you have this whole nother layer, which are devices. These are things you can actually interact with. So here's to illustrate what's possible, right? I can go into a prop gallery here. In this case, I'm going into like a safari type gallery. And I'm just going to find a prop. In this case, I think a Zodiac, a boat. All right, and I can just put that in the middle of this building. I could change its size and rotation and put it however I want. But then I can also create a device. I'm going to create, in this case, just a button. Now you see there are hundreds of devices. These are things that can interact with, they can programmatically connect, that you can link one to the other. In this case, I'm just going to create a button that can turn on a little bad guy. All right, so there's there's weapons, there's vehicles that you can connect to these devices, tons of different options. We'll snag a button, and I can just install it right against the wall. And I will also add, I think it's called a sentry, is one of the devices. So there's the sentry. And you can see that I can then customize this button and actually link it with like a function and an event. So you get into some of the basics of real kind of visual programming, where you can kind of say, hey, look, when this event happens, I want this other thing to trigger. In addition, in Fortnite Creative, there are hundreds of settings of the island itself, so I can do things like modify gravity to, lots of settings that can be changed. We'll dig into some of those, but I just want you to see the depth of what is possible. This is all, by the way, in the game. Like, I could be doing this with a controller, right? So this is like on my Xbox or on the PlayStation. I could be doing all of these things and creating these things with Nintendo Switch. A whole nother tool built into the game is what's called replays. So when you play through a round of Fortnite, it will record everything that happens around you in the game. And that's true not only for when you play like a battle royale, but also when you're in a Fortnite creative. So that will, it'll save all of that, but then you can, in real time, like in this replay, move your camera around this environment, change the camera settings, include the aperture, depth of field, focus, the time of day. And so you can create cinematics of this gameplay experience. So this is like a storytelling tool that can be used by students or by gamers. It's really powerful. So these are just some of the tools baked into Fortnite. So why does this matter? Well, gaming is a huge industry. It's hard to overstate. Now I swiped these slides directly from Epic Games and from some of their education folks. So a couple of things that are maybe surprising. One is the balance of male and female players. We tend to think of gaming as a male activity, but it's not exclusively male. The size of the industry is shocking. The idea that the last bullet point there, that the gaming industry is bigger than the movie and music industries combined. So these are real industries with real job opportunities. A quick context here for Epic Games. They are the makers of Fortnite, but Fortnite is not really their main product. So the main product of Epic Games is Unreal Engine, which is a game building engine. And that engine has been used by Epic Games to make many popular games, Fortnite being the most successful, but Guitar Hero, Gears of War, Rocket League. Okay, but they also, importantly, license Unreal Engine to third-party developers. So many of the world's most popular games have been made in Unreal Engine, and Epic Games then gets a licensing fee on the success of those games. But it is not just games. It is also visualizations for automotive industry, for architecture, for the film industry. anytime you need 3D rendering of something, VR, AR, augmented reality, the Unreal Engine can be a part of that. The demand for these skills continues to grow. Okay, so it's sometimes known as real-time 3D jobs. Okay, these are jobs in 3D, but it's not like pre-rendered like a Pixar movie. These are 3D, like real-time 3D. So the idea that you can interact with something either in a video game environment or in a virtual reality or hands-on augmented reality type environment. This is the way that the folks at Epic Games talk about moving students from player to creator. And so what we have is you're kind of introduced, this was sort of my experience as well, and of others in the room, I know, that you're playing a game like Fortnite, and then you start getting into Fortnite Creative, and now you're starting to build your own gaming experience. You're starting to develop some skills, understand what's happening in the kind of back end of the game. But there are other tools that Epic Games makes, like Twinmotion is another free for educator and for student tool that's used for visualizing like buildings and spaces like that. All of these drive towards Unreal Engine, which is the professional grade software, which is also free to use. You only pay for Unreal Engine if you sell more than $1 million worth of your software. So it's free to use, but it's hard to learn because it's a sophisticated professional grade tool. Now, as a science educator, video game analysis, the reason I think video games matter, okay, so one argument is it matters because there's jobs here in the video game industry. There's jobs in this real-time 3D. As a science educator, it matters to me because I think video game analysis is one of like the most coolest, interesting tools for exploring physics. So these are some projects I've done over the past decade using old video games. But I would argue that video game analysis allows us to get students kind of hooked on some ideas in physics and in science that we wouldn't normally otherwise hook them. And this is a case of a simple, what was this, Plants vs. Zombies, a lab that I built years ago where we analyzed the motion of the zombies to figure out who's going to be faster, the zombie walking with a cone on his head or the javelin zombie, and at what point is the javelin zombie going to pass the slower zombie. So it was a simple distance, rate, time type analysis using video capture. You know, with just a video, you can pull data out of a video game. Another classic example from previous decades would be Angry Birds. You know, you can calibrate the size of this little launcher, and you can click on the position of this bird in each frame of a video. And using that screen capture, you can extract data, and you could calculate things like how far will the bird go. Okay, so just kind of simple. These are sort of prototypical physics of video game type projects. Another one that was particularly interesting to me was the physics of osmos. This was the 2010 iPad Game of the Year. It's this really interesting game where you kind of rocket your little blue moat around using by launching little projectiles out of it, and you try to capture other projectiles and get bigger and bigger. And in the process, there's a lot of physics in this game. There's not only inertia and motion, but there's also some orbital mechanics. And so it's a really amazing game with lots of applications. And I got into it, wrote an article for the physics teacher like 6 or 7 years ago, where I was actually analyzing momentum in this game, which was something I'd never seen in a video game before, that you could do conservation of momentum, and it led to some interesting equations. And so for me, this was like a new discovery. It was like something I had never seen before, and was able to even share that with other educators through this article. So I think there's really cool potential for analyzing the science inside video games, hooking students, learning new things. All right, so here's my kind of story with Fortnite. And I think each of us, if you're a gamer, you undoubtedly have like these personal stories and connections from the games that you played with friends and family. Growing up, I'm the youngest of 5 boys, so playing video games for my brother was like a deeply exciting and fun part of my growing up. And so I love that I can do that for my kids. So these are my kids and their friends. And my son is up there in the top. This is one of my daughters, and the other daughter's over here. And we did a project last summer where I challenged all of these kids to basically learn Fortnite Creative. And I gave them a challenge to build a haunted house and do some different things. And this was our big celebration where everyone was showing each other their creations. So we had a whole bunch of TVs set up, and everyone had Fortnite going. And this is where it started for me, was playing Fortnite with my son on the two TVs. We'd play side by side. We'd play duos. And as I started playing the game more and more, I started kind of wondering about some of these questions that I used to investigate, like the science of video games. And one of the first things I got curious about was the scale of the game. Like anytime you're trying to understand a game, you need to calibrate the dimensions. You need like a natural ruler inside the game so you know how big things are. Well, Fortnite has built into it a distance measurement. You can mark a location, and I can run really, really far away, and I can tell it that's 2,048 meters away. So I made just hundreds and hundreds of structures to measure how big these individual structures are, right, as a way of measuring lots of different things. So when I did that, I found something kind of surprising, right, that when you build an individual structure, the length and width of this square is exactly 5.120 meters. It's a very precise number, which surprised me. And in return, the height was a very specific number, and so was the ramp length. And I was wondering about this, like why would it be so precise? And then I realized something kind of so this is how one could measure the height and the width. When you build a ramp, right, the ramp has to match perfectly with the height of that structure and its width. And so these values that are in the game happen to line up in such a way that they form what's called a Pythagorean triangle. Okay, so the numbers are not exactly 3, 4, and 5, but they are, if you were to take the height divided by the length and width, it would be exactly 3 over 4. Exactly 3 over 4. And so that relationship is one of the very few triangles where every side is a precise integer. And what that means is that the base and the height and the ramp all match up perfectly. That is to say, like you don't have, you would normally, if you had like a triangle of length 1 and 1, the hypotenuse would be the square root of 2, which is an irrational number that goes on forever, and so you can't get an exact precise number of them. But these Pythagorean triangles fit perfectly. So that was like one clue where I was like, I wonder if the designers of Fortnite were thinking through this kind of calculation and why they chose the values that they did. There are other kind of questions I was starting to investigate, just as I wanted to kind of say, what kind of science could we explore inside Fortnite? So I would build a little tower, and I'd look at where the sun's shadow was, and I'd start to think, can I measure the altitude of the sun and say, like, how realistic is the movement of the sun inside the game? Or I tried to measure all the things you see over there on the side. And with varying degrees of success, I was able to kind of get a sense of how realistic various concepts were in the game. So what you need to know about me is that I teach astronomy online, and what I love to do, and where I was going with all this, was I was like, okay, I'm going to investigate Fortnite. I'm going to see if there's any cool science going on, and then I'm just going to make some cool videos for my students, right? I like to add some interesting videos just to spice up. Hey, here's some science. Here's some cool physics that's in this video game. So I have a YouTube channel that I use with my teaching in astronomy, and here's an example video when I was at Disney World a couple years ago, and the curtains in my hotel room had constellations on them. But the constellations were all totally made up and were based on Disney characters, right? So that's just a silly video, but it's a cool connection to astronomy. Or another video, I was playing the game Hogwarts Legacy a year ago, and there's astronomy in that video game as well, which is actually kind of cool, because inside the game you actually look through a telescope, and there's constellations, and you can actually match this up to the real night sky and say, actually, those constellations are fairly accurate. So another simple example of a video I just wanted to add. This is the kind of thing I'm like, oh, maybe I could make some videos for Fortnite. But this was the holy grail I was going after, a video like a project like this. So again, this is, forgive the tangent, but this is to give you a sense of the kind of thing I was going for. So another example is the movie Lightyear. I happened to be watching Lightyear with my kiddos, and as I was watching, there's a scene where the spaceship gets knocked off course and Buzz does this really quick math, and I saw this math, and I was like, holy cow, that actually looks like real math. I was like, most Pixar movies or kid movies, they don't, it looks like gobbledygook. They're not actually trying to make it look like real math. And I was like, wow, there's actually Greek letters in there and all that. And then I promptly fell asleep because we were watching it in the evening. And when I woke up, the credits were playing and my family had left me. But so I'm watching the credits half asleep. And there I saw, in the credits, towards the very end, it said Math by Don McLean. And I was like, what? How do you get a credit in a Pixar movie for doing math? So I'm like, who is this guy? And I Googled as far as I could, and I tracked him down. I sent him an email, and because I wanted to ask him some questions for a video for my students. And I love this, because he emailed me back, and he's like, how on earth did you figure out it was me? I love that. And suffice it to say, let's see. It's unusual for someone to sit through all the credits of any Pixar film. It turns out his son was the director of the movie, wrote and directed it. He was like a mathematician turned artist, a sculptor, and so his son had asked him to kind of draw up some equations that look realistic, and they actually put those in the movie. So that was, again, another video that I shared with my students. So my goal in this journey here, as I've been exploring Fortnite, was like, how can I talk to someone at Epic Games? Can I find someone at Epic Games to talk about the science that went into Fortnite, the math that went into the game? So I went to LinkedIn. I just was like, all right, I'm going to see. I don't know anybody who works in video games. And I started, you can see actually right here. On LinkedIn, you can go to people who work at the company, and then you could search the employees. So I searched on the word education. Like, is there anyone who works in education at Epic Games? And I found a dude. His name is Steve Isaacs. And it turns out that he is the education program manager at Epic Games. Like, I had no idea that job even existed, right? And he's a former high school teacher who got really into teaching with video games and eventually got hired at Epic Games to go and share all the different things that I've been sharing with you, ways in which learning more about how to build games can lead to careers. What I learned from Steve, so I reached out to him. We had a couple brief conversations. He pointed me to lessons that other teachers have built, teaching social studies and different subjects, using Fortnite Creative specifically. But he also told me about something called the Epic MegaGrants program. So Epic Games had set aside $100 million to give away to indie game developers and curriculum developers and institutions across the world to do innovative things. So I applied for a MegaGrant to build my own original Fortnite islands to teach science. And I received that grant and then built out a few of these labs. So I would like to show you this. The premise here is that we can actually construct, because of the robust tools of Fortnite Creative, we can actually construct experiments in this virtual environment. So we don't just have to take a video of it and try to put all kinds of dots on it and extract data. We can actually get the data inside the game. So I'm going to, at the risk of being weird by playing a video of myself while I'm standing here, I am going to actually play this video so you get a sense of what these labs are actually like.
Virtual worlds make awesome laboratories, and one of my favorite virtual worlds is Fortnite. I've been wondering for a long time how fast the vehicles in Fortnite really go. I mean, a lot of the vehicles have speedometers, but those numbers could just be made up. And even if they aren't, it doesn't even tell you what the units are. So, I mean, is it kilometers per hour, miles per hour, meters per second? It just doesn't say. Plus, there's all these other vehicles that don't have speedometers, so we have no idea how fast those are going. Well, I decided to design an experiment that would allow me to precisely measure the speed of a whole bunch of the different Fortnite vehicles. Now, if you were in a science classroom, the way you would measure the speed of something is probably with a photo gate. A photo gate has these two gates, and when an object passes the first gate, it starts a timer, and then when it passes the second gate, it stops the timer. Now, if you know the distance between those two gates and you know the time it takes for the object to go from one to the other, then you can calculate the speed, because speed is just distance divided by time. So I built a photo gate inside Fortnite Creative. There's a gate that starts a timer and another one that ends the timer. And the time is kept actually using the race manager, which keeps pretty accurate time to the nearest hundredth of a second. I put all sorts of crazy vehicles into this virtual laboratory. Okay, there's normal cars and pickup trucks and semis, but there's also the Octane and a shopping cart, a UFO, an airplane, a hoverboard, everything I could think of. So the way this experiment works is you hop into a vehicle and you get it up to its maximum speed and you drive it through the two gates. And the time is captured for the time that it takes to travel that 50 meters between the two gates. And then you slam into a huge exploding wall, which allows you to reset and do it all over again. I figure that measuring the time it takes to go between those gates 3 times would give you a pretty good average value, which allows you to get a good measurement for the average speed. Now, I've created a variety of resources to help you do this experiment yourself. So in the description below this video, you'll find a link to an instruction sheet. You'll also find a data sheet. This is like a spreadsheet where you can record all your time measurements for each vehicle, and it will calculate the average and the speed in a few different units. You'll also find a link to a data collection video. This is if you can't get into Fortnite yourself. I've gone in for you in Fortnite Creative and driven each of these vehicles through the Fortnite photo gate.
All right, I think that gives you a sense of where this is going. So you can see that it's attempting to be like a curriculum, right? Like there's an instruction sheet that students could use, and you could do it as a classroom activity. All right, so this was the first one that I built, this measuring speed. Sorry, I won't make you do that again, all right? But then I went on to build several others, right? So one investigates projectile motion, another free fall acceleration, trying to understand gravity, terminal velocity, and then recreating a classic experiment. Instead of using the Tower of Pisa, Galileo dropping different objects, I used this leaning lighthouse inside the game. So I'd like to just show you, I think it would be the best use, even though I have a couple slides here on a deep dive into gravity, which is interesting, well, what the heck, let's take a quick peek. So the premise here is that I have built a drop tower inside. So one of the experiments is this drop tower where you teleport up to the top and you push a button and then you fall, right? And it's falling a fixed amount of, a fixed distance, and it carefully measures how much time it takes for you to fall. All right, so with that, you should be able to calculate the acceleration due to gravity. I'm sorry you have to look at my giant unshaven face, but there it is. So you can calculate the acceleration due to gravity just from that basic information. And what I did more than that is I added these little switches so that you can turn on low gravity or you can turn on high gravity. So you can actually then measure the acceleration due to gravity in each of these different states, and you can kind of compare what it actually is. So I don't know about you, but if you think about playing video games and what the gravity inside a video game is typically like, you would make a prediction you could make a prediction on what do you think the gravity in a game would be like. So I know you've played Fortnite a bit. I'm not sure if anybody else has. But do you, yeah, all right, of course. So what do you think? Do you think the gravity inside Fortnite would be like heavier than real life, about the same as real life, or lighter than real life? What do you think? Yeah? Right. Right. So when you're saying it'd be lighter, I'm going to repeat it because I'm on the microphone, that'll get captured, okay? So you're saying it'll be lighter because then it feels like you have superpowers. You like jump higher, you fall a little slower. When you're in a car or something, you go sailing further. It makes it more fun, right? Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. When you're in Fortnite Creative or something and you have something where it pulls you down really fast, it kind of feels like it just takes away all your energy, right? Like, so it feels like you've got this. Yes, that's what I was expecting as well. And you're wrong, which is what makes it fun. All right? I mean, okay, so I have to tell you, the first time I gave this presentation, I asked the same question, and a professor who has his PhD from Harvard University, literally, gave the exact same answer that you just did. And I was so happy, because he's definitely way smarter than I am, but he thought the exact same thing. So this is actually what I measured, okay? Now, Earth's gravity is 9.8, so we'll just say it's about 10, okay? The default in Fortnite, if you collect the data, the default that we're accustomed to playing with is 26 meters per second squared. So like 2.5 times real Earth's gravity. Now I know you're thinking like that's impossible. It's absolutely impossible because I know that in Fortnite I can jump over this table without even thinking about it. So how could gravity possibly be that strong? Well, it turns out it is. It is. And it is that way for a very good reason. So this is like, what's so exciting about this to me is that as shocking as this is, the makers of Fortnite did these calculations. They had to think about this to build the game, and I'll show you why. And why that's exciting to me is because as a science teacher, I want my students to know that the science they're learning in class will actually be used even if they go into an industry like making Fortnite. They're going to be using these ideas. It's also exciting to me because I'm going to show you some equations I've never, in all my years as a physics student and physics teacher, I've never used the equations this way to answer this one simple question. And that is this, all right? These are two equations that are taught in an introductory physics class for measuring the height of an object, that's y, okay, based on its initial velocity jumping, the time that it's in the air, and a, the acceleration due to gravity. The second equation is an expression for the final velocity of an object as it's jumping up into the air, given its initial velocity and its acceleration in time. So what I want to do is use these equations, these are from a standard introductory physics course, use these equations to write an expression for the height that a person can jump, the time they're in the air, and acceleration. So I can actually rearrange these equations. Okay, I make some assumptions like, okay, when I jump in the air at the very top, I'm briefly at rest. So at that moment, my final velocity is 0. And that allows me to simplify these equations. I end up with this expression. I've never derived this before until, and the reason I've never derived it before is because what I'm solving for is, if I were to create a universe, what do I want the acceleration to gravity to be? Right? And that's what the Fortnite developers had to ask. If I want to make my own game, and I want to make it really fun, what should the acceleration of gravity, how strong should gravity be? Every other time I've ever solved these problems in a physics classroom, this value was given to me because it is whatever it is on Earth, 9.8. So the question then becomes, now I can choose, what do I want? Y is how high can my player jump? And T is how long do I want them to be in the air? So now those are two questions that I would ask as a game developer. Well, how high do I want them to jump? They should be able to jump like over someone else's head, right? So maybe 2 meters, okay? So Y is going to be 2 meters. How long do I want them in the air? This turns out to be really important. Like, if you're going to jump that high, I actually want you to come back pretty quick. Like, I want you to only be in the air for maybe like a half a second. Because if you're in the air for like 2 seconds, that's going to really slow down the gameplay. So I want the player to jump really high, but I want them to come back to Earth really fast. And so I want that time to, let's just say, maybe be 1/3 of a second. Well, if I plug in those two values, I get that I actually want gravity to be really large. And the thing that we're not often thinking about is how strong the jump really is. When we play Fortnite, it feels like we're superhuman, not because gravity is low, but because our legs are springs. We're jumping so hard against this strong gravity that we go really high, but we come back really fast. So to me, this was a discovery that I made playing the game, doing these calculations. I was so convinced I was wrong. I re-derived it like 3 times. And yet, I'm like, wow, this is super cool. And the game developers must have already gone through and thought through this. I can then ask a question, well, do I want all objects to accelerate the same? Do I want a car to have the same force of gravity? Now, in the real world, that's like a ridiculously stupid question. Of course, gravity is going to be the same for everything. But in a video game, I could have every single object have a different force of gravity. And in fact, I can design an experiment to test that. And I did. That is, in a sense, what Galileo did in his famous experiment, where he dropped different objects of different masses from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, supposedly, and measured how they fell. And so I created a game, a little silly game, where you teleport up to the top of this leaning tower, and I could drop, for example, a whole bunch of beach balls. These beach balls are all very different masses. In fact, the difference in the mass of these beach balls is like 10,000. One of them I set to weigh 10,000 kilograms. The one on the other side only weighs 1 kilogram. But that I thought was not quite interesting enough, so instead I took two vehicles that weigh incredibly different amounts. I took the battle bus and a car, and I found that they were falling approximately at the same rate. But then, just out of curiosity, because I had noticed some weird things, the last experiment I did was the chicken drop, where I took the battle bus, which weighs, we'll just say, approximately 10,000 kilograms, and a chicken, and dropped them both. And you can see in this case, the chicken drops much, much faster than the battle bus. I have no idea why the game is built that way, but clearly gravity is impacting different objects differently inside Fortnite. All right, this is where it gets incredibly exciting. On this pathway of a player moving, a gamer moving from a player up to a creator, using Unreal Engine, these are the tools that we've had, Twinmotion and Fortnite Creative. But about a year ago, Epic Games introduced a new, really powerful tool called Unreal Editor for Fortnite, which lives right here in this space between Fortnite Creative and Unreal Engine. It allows you to, if you're a gamer, you already know, because the UEFN levels, right? You've seen the UEFN levels? No? Okay. That's all right. So in Fortnite Creative, you go in there and you'll see all kinds of UEFN levels. What it allows you to do is import your own custom assets. You can build cinematics. That's some of the things I was doing, where the camera would shift to view me from the outside, looking at that lighthouse. And it is really a powerful new tool for creating original games or original experiments. One of the most interesting aspects for me in my project was the addition of what's called verse programming. So you can actually write custom code to impact some of the devices in the game, and I'll show you some examples. So this is what UEFN looks like. It, again, is a free tool that you can download on PCs, and the interface is actually very similar to the Unreal Engine. You can grab devices. Look, that's actually lighting from one of the lamp posts, but I can grab a tree and I can rotate it, so I get a much greater control than I ever did in UEFN. But I can still draw from all of these existing assets that were there before. Now, though, I can pull assets from other 3D libraries. Here I pulled a photorealistic avocado. Okay, so this does not come from the Fortnite library. Instead, it came from another 3D library. And you can create your own custom surfaces. So I imported my daughter's face and threw it onto a sphere to make a ridiculous Fortnite map in which my own child is in it. So the power of what you can create with this UEFN is much more than what was ever possible. This is the verse code that you can access. So it maybe just looks like gobbledygook. It is a new language that's being developed on the fly here, so it's constantly being updated. But it looks kind of familiar if you've ever done programming before. You define variables, there are functions, and even though I'm no expert programmer, I've been able to limp along and build some of my own custom devices, which are really exciting. So I want to show you an example of some of the things that have been built now with UEFN. Taking the same Fortnite engine, we can make really much more photorealistic environments. So this is like an educational island that was created based on the pyramids of Giza and was really one of the kind of first gee whiz, wow educational applications of this new tool, where you can move around and explore this virtual environment. It's really a new way of immersing yourself in a virtual environment inside Fortnite, which is really crazy. The ways that I've been using it is, for example, in my lab where I want to measure projectile motion. In order to determine how far an object is going to fly, you need to know what angle you're shooting it at. And measuring the angle is actually really hard. And using just Fortnite Creative, this was going to be my solution. I built a big tower of structures. I put billboards on them to number them. And so then I could calculate, using trigonometry, how far away that wall was and how tall that wall was. And as I got into this little cannon and pointed my way up, then I could come back and calculate manually using trig functions what the angle is. And for a student activity, that felt pretty cumbersome, and not an ideal way to do it. But with UEFN, I was able to build a custom device that I could go into Verse, take my player's position, and directly pull. I mean, it's kind of, you can almost read it off, like the profile of the character, get their view rotation, get yaw, pitch, roll degrees. And that is the value I wanted, which was the yaw of the player. And not only that, I could display it directly on the screen. So I can now instantly get the angle of my player when they're inside the cannon. Not only that, I can actually calculate the velocity of the player. I can get their position. I can get all of this data that I used to have to get by doing video analysis and going point by point by point. I can now extract that in real time using the code built in to Fortnite. It means I can also create new kinds of games. Like there's an old movie, Speed, with Keanu Reeves, where he's in a bus, and if the bus goes too slow, a bomb blows up. I'm like, I could make a game based on that, where like I'm driving a car, and if my speed goes too slowly, then my car will blow up, right? Like it unlocks new kinds of games. Here's what I'm most proud of as as an achievement, and to me this points to the future possibility now of what. So as I'm kind of now reaching the end of my presentation, kind of looking to what's possible in the future, this is the terminal velocity experiment. So terminal velocity, you're parachuting. When you jump out of an airplane, you don't just accelerate the whole time. You very quickly reach a constant speed, right? When the air resistance balances gravity, and now I just keep falling at a constant speed. For that first minute, you fall pretty fast. You accelerate, but then you reach a constant speed. So what you'll see is as I'm playing here, I'm recording on the screen, I'm recording time and the speed and my dive angle, how quickly, like my angle of attack as I'm diving. And that's going to start as soon as I jump off. But what I'm doing on the back end of this custom UEFN island is I'm recording all of that data and storing it. And then I'm going to display it in the game on a chart. So I don't even, as the student, I don't even have to record that. I can actually get a graph made inside UEFN. So watch as this plays out. So the data starts being collected. The moment I jump, you can see I'm diving at a very steep angle. And I've actually put a blackboard down there in the island. And as soon as I land, my data will be graphed for me. And so you can see this is actually collecting my vertical speed data versus time. And for the first 1.5 to 2 seconds, I was accelerating. My velocity kept increasing. And then it flattened out and was a constant speed. And when I dive at a less steep angle, like if I go up here, a little less steep, you can see that it will again collect the data and the graph will look different because now I'm diving at like 12 degrees. All right, and I'll speed it up as I reach the ground. Hello, that wasn't what I meant to do. And there's my chart that it was made. So what gets me excited is it's possible to actually create like a data collection tool directly in Fortnite where students can collect all of their motion data. You can have, in a sense, a physics laboratory baked right into the game where you can collect all the data, display it even in real time in the game environment, and design all kinds students could design their own experiments inside the game. So where I'm at in this project is I submitted a new MegaGrant application after having built these labs, which were much more kind of like follow these instructions. I proposed what I called the UEFN Physics Playground, which was an environment where data could be displayed throughout the island, but there's all kinds of, in a sense, equipment to play with where students, it's much more open-ended, that students could design their own experiments and then collect the data inside the game. Yeah, so thank you for coming. Thank you for letting me share this with you. I'd love to answer any questions you have, but that's the information I want to share with you guys. Yeah, thank you. Does this spark any thoughts or questions or comments? That's right. It is interesting. And even, it's worth noting too, like when the gravity is low in Fortnite, because you can put it really low, then it is in fact very low, and you do go sailing way into the air. But what I love is like that idea of measuring what is gravity in this game, like for any game, like Mario or Fall Guys, like any game is a game where you could try to answer that question. The one trick is having to calibrate, like how big is this world? So like how tall is a Fall Guy dude, Because like once you just need some ruler in the game to calibrate the length measurement. Once you have that, you can measure all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. What grade are you in? Yeah? That's awesome. I've got a ninth grader who's a kid of a friend, and he's working with me on a project right now related to wildfire. So we have this idea of like, can we make a wildfire education island? And I just learned with UEFN like 2 days ago, I was playing around with like using verse, okay? I can keep track of all of these things, and when it burns and disappears, it can trigger like either gaining a point or losing a point. So the idea we have right now is like making a game where you are like trying to put out fires. And so you're using like the chug cannon, which is like for, giving health, but it also extinguishes fire. So if fires are starting in different places, you can run around and like the score is, oh, you're losing score because things are burning. You can battle the clock and try to reduce, right? Try to stop fire. So it's the possibilities for using Fortnite in like serious play, they sometimes call it, are really tremendous. But it's a deep rabbit hole, right? Like there's a lot of places you can go with it. Oh, that's true. That's true, and it's constantly changing. There's new things being added to creative. This summer, I was part of like a 2-day workshop, and it was all about climate. It was put on by Epic Games, and it was all about like climate science using video games. How can we like take these ideas and turn them into games that help people engage with? So that's where this idea came from. Was like, oh, we could maybe do something with this, but the possibilities are there. It's just it's real work to build it. Yeah, totally. And that's where like with UEFN and certainly with Unreal Engine, like it's like a slider. You're like, I want more clouds or less clouds, and then a variable that just gets changed in the code, right? Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah. So I remember when I first did the calculation, I looked up what is the world record standing jump height, right? And the value is not far off from that. It's ridiculous how the person does it, right? Like they bend their body and like they barely get their feet up to do the real jump. But it's not, the height isn't that far off from what the player in the game can do versus what but the physiology of the body of the game player ranges from, alien to, Wolverine or whatever, so like there is no real connection between the player's performance and the skin that they have on. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I'm happy to chat about it more if we want. I'll take the mic off and we can, but thank you for coming. Yeah. Yeah, my pleasure.